Okay, so hello, my name is Nina, and I will be presenting research that we conducted with my colleagues on transition pathways for the salmon value chain. Moment, there we go. So these are the topics I'll be covering today. I will first sort of briefly tell you about the aim and motivation and the method we used, and then discuss our findings and analysis. And then I will end my presentation on pathways that we identified, and through our analysis and our findings, and the implications for more sustainable salmon aquaculture. So salmon aquaculture is an interesting case study because the industry is set to expand, both due to increased demand for salmon, but also because national and regional governments are planning for its expansion and its increase. There are, however, various challenges and issues to consider in this context. So with this study, we wanted to sort of explore the perspectives of the industry representatives, and see how they foresee the sort of sustainability challenges in the future, and how they foresee the industry tackling them, basically, and how they see the transition going forwards. So we conducted focus groups and interviews with industry representatives, mostly CEOs, both in Iceland and in Norway. And then we also had one interview with a policymaker at the EU level. So we then adapted our findings using the broader theory of sustainability transitions and integrated them with findings and insights from previous work within the VALUMICS project to do with governance aspects. So before I go on to our findings, I just want to briefly begin by discussing the current status of the industry, or what in more sort of theoretical terms we termed the theory terms the socio-technical regime, and how the governance structure has been shaped and continues to be shaped by globalization and various other macro trends. So what characterizes governance basically in the salmon aquaculture right now are horizontal collaborations and vertical integration, including relations through networks, third-party assessment, and certification schemes, as was mentioned earlier today. At the same time, though, there is also the traditional sort of state-led only model of governance, for example, through regulations, to do a lot with licensing and environmental impact assessments and so on. So this points to a sort of hybrid governance that is a mix of private and public forms of governance. And this, I will come to it later, why that's important. So political decisions also heavily influence salmon aquaculture by regulating the location of farm sites and their social impacts on communities. And there is a limited availability of new licenses in Norway, for example, which motivates Norwegian farms to expand their production in other countries, for example, Chile and the US and Canada and Iceland. So in order to ensure continued growth and supplies of salmon to markets. The most traditional and widely used production system is open net pens, which are usually situated close to the coast in the fjords. And the industry has been tackling various environmental challenges directly related to open net pens: escapes, disease, algal blooms, mortality issues in general. At the same time, though, there are also pressures at the institutional environment to address broader environmental issues and challenges, such as climate change. Through, for example, fuel efficiency measures, mitigation of emissions, waste reduction, and so on. So this is just the same image, a little bit simplified. Pressures come from the sort of wider international environment and developments at the macro level, or as it is referred theoretically, the socio-technical landscape. And these can range from market and trade developments to international agreements to pressures from civil society to address sustainability issues and global shocks like the current pandemic. And so all these are sort of part of the wider landscape that can affect the industry, but I will not dwell on these very much now because I'd like to talk more about niche innovations. So changes in the landscape, though they occur mostly at the macro level, can either create windows of opportunity for innovations, both technical and institutional. Theoretically, we'd call these niche innovations, to break through or otherwise create pressures for change and thus influence dominant regimes. We can also think of dominant regimes as just business as usual. So limitations in terms of access to new areas, coupled with sort of incentives to innovate, have also encouraged innovation in diverse production methods. We identified various niches, which you can see here at the bottom, and carried out an exploratory assessment of their ability to tackle sustainability challenges by looking to the academic literature, which I'd like to turn to next. Okay, so here's our assessment. It's not exhaustive, but it does give a good overview of both the challenges and the ways the niches identified in our study may or may not address them. So the colors signify a positive effect in green, a negative effect in red, and no effect or not enough information for us to really assess in yellow. Now, niche innovations either have a competitive or a symbiotic relationship with the regime, depending on their capacity to replace or enhance it. So if we consider, for example, larger smolts, these enhance the current regime, open net pens, by maintaining the smolts for longer periods of time in land-based closed facilities, and thus addressing some of the sustainability issues related to open net pens. Land-based farming and RAS operations, which are entirely land-based, have the capacity are often supported by policy and incentives actually at the moment. And although they have the capacity to replace these open net pens and traditional farming systems, but that potential is uncertain and mostly has to do with economic viability. But either way, land-based aquaculture farming would solve some issues, but not address all sustainability issues, such as sustainable feed provision and carbon emissions. So the analysis of sustainability contributions of these niche innovations basically shows that no single niche can address all the sustainability challenges in the chain, and especially not the more major issues such as feed and emissions. In addition, our governance analysis also shows that regime actors have power to resist change, and that the hybrid governance structure in the chain affords them the flexibility to implement various incremental improvements. So these sort of symbiotic niches I've been talking about. Therefore, a complete regime shift seems unlikely, at least for the next decades or so. Rather, a continuation of the current dominant regime and the gradual shift towards more diversity in production methods and products seems more likely. The results of the sustainability contribution analysis also reflect the focus on local environmental challenges rather than global sustainability challenges, such as the carbon footprint of the extended value chain. So to find a path towards more sustainability in the farm value chain, a broader food system perspective is needed by all relevant actors, really. And this includes not just industry, but also policymakers and NGOs. So it's important because the role of fish in general needs to be included in food policy, and especially in relation to the protein transition, that is to say, the aim of sustainably reducing animal proteins without compromising health-related objectives. So I hope I didn't talk too fast. Thank you for your attention. So this was just a short summary of findings and analysis from a scientific article that is currently under review. When the article is published, it will be on our website, but you can also follow us on our social media platforms or contact us directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina.